where Precious has sex with her mother. The book goes into more detail than the film. In the film, Lee Daniels, in this one particular instance, does not graphically show what is happening, but the suggestion is there. And again, as you watch the scene, I want you to hear Precious's mother tell her, you may not be able to hear it very much because she says it almost in a whisper. She says, as the mother is in the bedroom masturbating, and Precious is getting ready to go to school, the mother calls down to Precious and says, Precious, come take care of mommy. And you hear Precious walk up the stairs to take care of mommy. That's sick. That's sick. It was sick when it was written in a book form, and it's sick when it's produced on the screen. That's sickness. And we got to be able to identify sickness when we see it and determine how we're going to respond to it. That is what healthy people do. That is what sane people do. So after Precious takes care of her mother, she leaves the house to go to school, and she's still hungry. So she stops into this diner and steals a bucket of chicken and eats the bucket of chicken as she makes her way to school. Now, anybody remember the school, where the school is located that Precious goes to, the alternative school, Each One Teach One? The school is on the 11th floor of the Teresa Hotel in Harlem. The Teresa Hotel is the building where Malcolm X was assassinated. All right? On a promising note, on a high note. That's what Time magazine said. Let me tell you how I interpreted the end of this film. Precious leaves the welfare office with her 2 children. One child is mentally retarded. The other is an infant. She is both their mother and their sister. Precious is 17 years old and reads now, thanks to the assistance of Mrs. Rain, she now reads on a 7th grade level, and she says she hopes to go to high school next year. So she's going to go to high school, begin high school at a time when most people are leaving. Precious has no job skills, and no place to live. And she's HIV positive. Her father gave her HIV. So what kind of life is she going to have for herself in New York City? How is this a promising future for this girl? So I looked at this ending, and it just leaves you flat. And I found myself wishing, I said, Lee Daniels, since he took liberty with the novel, he could have taken liberty and given us a little something to hope for. He could have, since Precious was learning to write, since she was learning to journal, he could have taken it a step further and maybe showed her a couple years later, after she maybe wrote a book about her life and how she overcame, how she lifted herself up. That would have been a more realistic way of ending this story and giving people hope. But he leaves you with nothing, leaves you flat on your face. So the reality is, some have praised the ending. Praised it by talking about the transformative powers of literacy and how it frees Precious. But they neglect to mention the social dynamics that created the poverty and the violence and the crime that breeds illiteracy. They conveniently left off all of these issues and just leave you hanging. So we should be suspect of anybody who praises this movie. And one person that we must be suspect of who did praise this film is Barbara Bush. Barbara Bush wrote an article on Precious in the December 9th, 2009 issue of Newsweek magazine. And this is what Barbara Bush had to say about Precious. She said, recently, George and I hosted a special sneak preview of Precious in our hometown, Houston. The audience included 200 young people and old, teachers, corporate executives, parents, and grandparents. The abuse, sexual, physical, mental, this young woman suffers at the hands of her parents is difficult to watch. But what saves her from a life of despair is a teacher who helps her learn to read and write. After 30 years promoting literacy, I've never felt more energized. If young people could read and write, they're less likely to drop out of school, turn to drugs and violence, get pregnant, and depend on welfare, depend on the government. 3 decades ago, I decided to use my bully pulpit to promote literacy. The Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy has given out 733 literacy grants in 50 states and the District of Columbia. If I were to give out a homework assignment, it would be this: go see this movie. Now, while Barbara Bush promotes literacy, her husband and sons, who are president and governors, they created public policies that increase illiteracy, crime, poverty, violence in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. That's a historical reality. So we have to be suspect whenever Barbara Bush talks about literacy but neglects the circumstances, the social dynamics that breeds illiteracy, crime, violence, drug abuse. It's a contradiction. In 2005, her son slept through Hurricane Katrina while hundreds died and thousands were displaced. And then this thing, I'm not even going to call her a woman, this thing spoke ill of those men, women, and children who were bused from New Orleans to Houston. And then she and her husband went to visit them in a relief center in Houston, and this is what she said. It was picked up by a reporter who was there, and it was broadcast internationally. This is what this compassionate woman said about this disenfranchised black folk. She said, almost everybody I talk to says, we're going to move to Houston, all the black people that she talked to in this relief center. What I'm hearing, which is sort of scary, is that they all want to stay in Texas. Everyone is so overwhelmed by the hospitality, and so many people in the arena here, you know, were underprivileged anyway, so this is working out well for them. That's what she said, and it's on the historical record. So we have to be suspect of this woman when she sings the praises of Precious. So let's move to another aspect of the film. You know, and her statements reinforces what Kanye West said. Kanye West was right. Neither George Bush or his mama liked black people. And we have to be suspicious of any person who speaks favorably of Precious, the book, and the movie. They were produced, written, and directed by Negroes and financed by whites in order to advance the idea of white supremacy and black inferiority. So, who were the people who brought us Precious? Where did they come from? And how have their actions impacted the black community? As I explore the background of some of the major players in this production, I want you to remember the words of Susan Taylor, that hurt people hurt people.